Theory of Rajazz. The name Rajazz is a contraction of the word raga and the word jazz. The Rajazz allies the desire to stick to one single color, specific to Indian ragas, and the desire to modulate, specific to our Western music. The theory of Rajazz works from three essential rules. Rule number 1. The basic material of Rajazz is always composed of 5 notes. In this sense, Rajazz borrows from Indian raga the will to limit itself to a fixed melodic material. Rule number 2. We agree that inside the Rajazz, no interval between 2 successive notes will exceed a major third. In our system of 12 chromatic tones, this gives us 155 possibilities of pentatonic scales. Here you see the table of those 155 pentatonic scales, classified in Rajazz. The color blocks group together the families of pentatonic having the same first 3 notes. But since some scales are sharing the same material, each Rajazz can be declined in 5 modes: C, D, E, G, A, D, E, J, A, C, E, G, A, C, D, G, A, C, D, E, A, C, D, E, G. They all share the same material, so we can organize our 155 scales into 31 Rajazz from 5 modes each. Here's the list of the 31 Rajazz and the submodes. Rule number 3. To modulate, we use an internal Rajazz interval by treating it melodically as a pivot. This implies that the pentatonic towards which we pivot has the same interval in common. We use this pivot interval to pass from one to the other. There are 2 types of pivot intervals: those which exist between successive notes of a Rajazz and those which lie between non-successive notes. The interval that can serve as a pivot are exclusively the minor second, the major second, the minor third, the major third, and the tritone fourth. Fourths and perfect fifths are therefore excluded. The tritone fourth is only present between non-successive notes. 6ths and 7ths are comparable to thirds and seconds by inversion. To illustrate a Rajazz, I start from a chromatic circle, and I draw a pentagon between different degrees of the scale. Take, for example, Rajazz 1, which is 1, flat 3, 4, 5, 6. While the pivot intervals between successive notes are shown in black, and the pivot intervals between non-successive notes in dark pink. At the bottom left, you'll find the type and number of present pivot intervals. To fully understand how each pivot interval allows you to modulate, let's consider one by one each pivot interval of Rajazz number 1. The minor third that we have between 1 and flat 3 allows us to pivot towards the minor third we can find between 6 and 1. For example, in C, the minor third between C and E flat allows us to rotate to Rajazz 1 in E flat, where you find C, E flat between 6 and 1. Here's an example. Now, the major second we have between flat 3 and 4 allows you to pivot towards 4-5 or 5-6. For example, in C, the major third between E flat and F allows you to rotate in Rajazz 1 in B flat, where you find E flat F between 4 and 5, or to Rajazz 1 in A flat, where you find E flat F between the 5th and the 6th degrees. Here's the first example of modulation from C to B flat using the major third E flat F. And now an example of modulation from C to A flat using E flat F as pivot. The major second between 4 and 5 allows you to pivot towards the major second between flat 3 and 4, or to the major second between 5 and 6. In C, the major second you have between F and G allows you to rotate to Rajazz 1 in B flat, where FG is between 5 and 6 degrees, or to Rajazz 1 in D, where you'll find FG between flat 3 and 4. Here's the first example of modulation from C to B flat using FG as a pivot. And another example of modulation from C to D using FG as pivot. The major second we have between 5 and 6 allows you to pivot towards the major second you have between flat 3 and 4 or between 4 and 5. For example, in C, the major second you have between G and A allows you to pivot to Rajazz 1 in D, where you find GA between 4 and 5, or to Rajazz 1 in E, where you'll find GA between flat 3 and 4. Here's the first example of modulation from C to D1 using GA as a pivot. And another example of modulation from C to E using GA as pivot. Finally, we have this minor third between the 6th and the 1st degree that allows us to rotate towards the minor third we have between 1 and flat 3. In C, the minor third we have between A and C allows us to rotate to Rajazz 1 in A, where you find AC between 1 and flat 3. Here's an example. Now, let's see the pivotal intervals between non-successive notes, here shown in pink. Our first interval is tritone. For the tritone force, by convention, I will place the circle above the 1st degree or below sharp 4 for any Rajazz where there is a second tritone. So the tritone we have between flat 3 and 6 allows us to pivot towards Rajazz where this tritone is between 6 and flat 3. So in C, the tritone we have between A flat and A allows us to rotate to Rajazz 1 in F sharp, where we can find the same tritone between flat 3 and 6. Here's an example. We also have major thirds between flat 3 and 5 that allows us to pivot towards the major third we have between 4 and 6. Once again, in C, the major third between E flat and G allows us to rotate to Rajazz 1 in B flat, where we find this same major third between 4 and 6. Here's an example. The major third we find between 4 and 6 allows us, of course, to pivot toward the major thirds we have between flat 3 and 5. So in C, the major third between F and A allows us to modulate in Rajazz 1 in D, where FA lies between flat 3 and 5. Here's an example. Now you can listen to a short piece of Rajazz 1 used only in improvisation and in jazz. another example of Rajazz 1 used in composition in a more classical style. You'll notice that the modulations allowed by the pivot intervals of a Rajazz look sometimes like usual modulations in our Occidental harmonic universe. This is the case for some of the example of this Rajazz number 1. But the more the basic material of a Rajazz is far from the usual scales we are used to, the more the modulations it allows open new melodico-harmonic perspectives and new colors. The exploration of a Rajazz is therefore done through all the possibilities offered by its pivots. These potential connections can be illustrated for every Rajazz in the form of a musical mandala. But to simplify the application of this technique, it's possible to formulate the set of potential modulations of a Rajazz. Thus, if the pivotal notes of Rajazz 1 in C allow to modulate in E flat A, B flat D, A flat E, or F sharp, we can say that all Rajazz number 1 starting from its tone X could modulate towards X plus or minus a major third, X plus or minus a minor third, X plus or minus a major second, and a tritone of X. A complete Rajazz file therefore looks like this. On the left side you have the Rajazz number, the pivot intervals. On the right side, the Rajazz material, the submodes, and the possible modulations formulas. In the middle, of course, you have the musical mandala. We can use a Rajazz in a closed circuit or in an open circuit. In a closed circuit, we always play the same Rajazz, and we therefore only modulate towards the transpositions of that same color in other tones. The number of pivot intervals is very defined and limited. In an open circuit, we can use 2 or more Rajazz and mix all the transpositions of those. The number of possibilities of pivot intervals is still very defined, but more important. In an open circuit, a Rajazz can be mixed with another Rajazz. Therefore, any potential pivot interval is maintained in its musical mandala. Rajazz 1 appears identical in closed and open circuits because it has several major seconds, minor thirds and major thirds. Each of these intervals is therefore found in another place in one of the transpositions of the same Rajazz. But Rajazz number 2, for example, will be different in closed or open circuit because it has only 1 minor second, 1 major second, and 1 major third in its pivot intervals. A Rajazz in a closed system only works with itself. Therefore, any pivot intervals appearing only once does not allow transposition into a closed circuit. These possibilities are then removed from the diagram. As for the ragas, we end up with a limited musical material and precise rules generating a binding system. The main idea is to insist on a defined color and dig this color. The spirit of Rajazz arises from both the exploration of this color and the most varied use of its pivots. The symbolism of the system. The pivots of a Rajazz are like our neurons. In our brains, even though they exist in themselves, neurons only really take on meaning through the connections they make. The architecture of human thought, therefore, does not depend so much on our neurons as on the number of potential connections they can maintain with each other via synapses. The Rajazz have basic material consisting of 5 notes, but the real architecture is based on the potential connections they can maintain. The pivotal intervals play in a way the role of the synapses. Those intervals thus ensure a connection, a transmission, passage, an action potential towards modulation. I like to think that composition or improvisation from Rajazz is built through mastery and exploration of the action potential of this material and this technique. Finally, you'll find here all the complete files and mandalas in open circuit of our 31 Rajazz. Thanks for your attention.